Hi guys,
Look at this. Oh my, there's a
welcome.
lot of people in here. This is awesome. I love it. Welcome back, everybody. I think we've had a little bit of a hiatus. I don't know when's the last time we did one of these, but we have some
It's been
cool
a
stuff.
it's been a
It's
while,
been, well, hell, a couple months? I don't know, 2 months, month and a half, I don't know, something like that.
maybe a little
Um,
more. It's
the
fine.
guys, the R&D was super, super busy to get this new upgrade, which I just sum it up as better user experiences, right? But better control nodes give you a better control applications, Studio
Hmm.
and Uno, but Studio is what we'll take a look at today, as it pertains to Studio. Um, and better user experiences make better, happier operators of cool graphics because we make the
Hmm.
coolest graphics on the web or anywhere, I think.
You guys
So
do with us.
yeah,
Yeah.
we are. I'm going to share my screen. I think we just dive right into it, right?
Yeah, sounds good.
Here we go. I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to look over to the right. So just bear with me because it's a little bit easier on my bigger monitor. I'm in a singular count. I'll just go over the basics. And we just made a quick new composition. It's right here. So everyone can do that. That has a singular count. Just close this window here. And Catherine set that up for me. So let's just dive right into exactly what it is we are talking about today. In today's webinar, let me move this out of the way. Blank composition with just one sub-composition, just to go over the basics. And I'm
Are
going to
you
go
sure?
into that. Oh, am I
Really quick,
sharing
are you
that
sharing
right?
your screen? Yeah.
I should be.
I don't know if you're just
Can you guys
setting
see
it
it's
up.
a good resolution before I keep going?
I don't see a screen share.
Really?
That might
Let me
be
try
me
again.
though.
Hold on
Anyone
one
in the
sec.
chat? Oh, here we go. There it is.
Oh, sorry about that. I think
That's all good.
whatever.
Can
Uh,
you zoom in a little bit, or
yeah,
I
yeah, I
always
can zoom in
like to
if
go
I can
in
do
just
that.
a bit. Hi guys, welcome.
How's that look in terms of the user interface?
Fine for me.
Pretty
It
good?
squeezes stuff, but we want to make sure you guys see everything. So yeah, that's great.
Okay, let me just go back to the dashboard. So I assume everybody that's on this webinar has a singular account. I would hope so that you can follow along either now or after. But I'm in a singular account, and Catherine already made a new composition for me. So real quick, the basics, new composition. It's right here, it's created, it's opened. And what we are going to talk specifically about are control nodes. So I'm just going to do this and show you. These are all of our control nodes. Some of them are new, some of them are improved. We're going to
Hmm.
zero in on a couple of them that are really improved, like markedly improved. So what I'd like to do is in this group, I'm just going to drop a rectangle, and at the parent level, let's just scale this down a little bit. Let's go to 50, 20 and just drop it down to the bottom. Ooh, let's go this, just so we have something to look at. And let's drop it down to the bottom of the screen. I don't know, we'll just approximate a simple lower third, and let's put some text on it. Okay, so let's take the text. Let's see, a little tough with the
It's so
resolution in the
tiny.
center. Is it? I mean, I'm zoomed in. Oh, the text, you mean the text is really tiny or
Text, yeah,
so
just
a
the
little,
text.
as long as I'm here, I always like to sprinkle in a couple of shortcuts. R on the keyboard, R as in Richard, or I don't know, whatever. Hit R and that will set that to 0 in any of these fields. So you'll set this to reset. Let's take the lock off. Anyway, so we have a piece of text, and as we know, I'm going to start with a basic control node. As we know, let's just call this text. I'll call it text node. Hit enter, and I'll connect this to text node. All right. Other way to do that really quick, I'm just going to go over just the basics would be to click on text and create it in, I call it in this direction, right? Create it from the property down to the control
Hmm.
node, or just creating the control node and then connecting it to the specific property. So let's just call this one text node. Okay. I would
And
think
just
most
really quick on
people,
that,
yep,
it's a little kind of hidden thing with text. It defaults to creating a text node, not a text area
yes,
control node. So just so you guys are aware, if you want a text area where you can have multi-line, you've got to create
yep.
it from the actual panel, which as you guys can see is a new panel. I'm sure most of you have been playing around with the new panel. So if you can talk through like the new panel, it's pretty clear cut when you kind of navigate through it, Stephen, but um, where all the pieces are of like how to update and adjust an actual control node within this new interface would
Yes,
be
good point.
cool to cover.
So you're talking about right in here, right?
Yeah, just the left is the list, and stuff has kind of been shifted around.
Yep. So if we just look at, let's just start with text, which everyone's familiar with. It's probably the most commonly used control node. And by default now, what you'll see is we've got just an ID. You can expand this. I'm just going to touch on this and have a unique ID and title. And there are instances in which you'd want to do that if you're doing some more advanced scripting. I won't dive too much into that because I'll keep it sort of high level. And then you've got this toggle for advanced where um, you have a number of different options. Hiding in form, so you don't see it in your control app because you just want to, you're working with it in your composition, but you don't actually want to expose it. You can actually hide the title now in the control app. Instant update, we had this before. I believe we called it instant update before. Maybe we changed the verbiage on
I
that.
think it was immediate update.
Immediate update.
Yeah.
That sounds correct. And then there is tag as advanced, which is new. Yes.
Hmm.
So what I'm going to do is I think just delete this one, and I'm going to dive into the one we're going to cover in more detail, which is my personal favorite, which is the selection.
Well, should we cover some of the new ones first? Because I know that we've got
Yeah.
a really interesting other comp setup for selection, which is pretty cool.
Okay, so let's bring the text node back in there first, and let's connect
Yeah,
it back. Okay. And then let's go at the top down. So the node
yeah,
container.
yeah,
So
that's
let's
great.
call
And I'm
this,
gonna, yeah,
yep.
name that. I'm just gonna drop in for everybody here. We've got some release notes from May when we did this amazing update that runs through all of these details. So you can absolutely just follow along or read through the article, and we'll try to cover everything that's in there. So sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
No problem. So why would you want a node container? So you might want to call this, let's name this text. Uh, and let's put text underneath here and let's give this a more descriptive name like title. And let's say I also wanted to do the color. So I'll just go this direction. And now I've got text title, I've got title and color. So what I'm doing here is making a nice, all of the things regarding to text. Maybe I even want, for example, let's do letter spacing. Right. So now I've got, and I can reorder these, right? But I've got this nice node container, which gives you a way, an organizational structure for your control nodes. So it's super, super handy
Mm-hmm.
control nodes. And you, like I said, you can reorder these. And as Catherine was saying, there's a number of different options here under the advanced settings for each of your different control nodes. Here we have number, text control node, and I'm sorry, color and title. So yeah, take advantage of this one. I've been using this quite a bit. This large business here, large
Mm-hmm.
and small, I just want to cover this because if you notice here, you see the UI. This is the UI that you're actually building. But if I set this to small, you're going to see it's going to be exactly half the size of large, right? Large meaning it's longer. So if you only have a few things, if you don't need that extra space, you can set it to small mode, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and this is
Uh,
particularly useful when you want two node containers side by side in your interface. So instead of having them stacked vertically, it just kind of consolidates things in the interface.
yeah, it's pretty. I've
So
been using that one a lot. You have tool tips right here. So you could put anything in. This is a tip. And you can have, am I missing anything? Pre-selections.
we're
I
gonna
won't
maybe
go into
cover
this.
presets. Yeah, JSON presets is pretty in depth. We're gonna
Yep,
cover that in a future webinar, but it's pretty cool.
I think so. Yeah, that one's pretty deep. I
What
think
about
this
turning on and off the checkbox?
the entire
Oh,
checkbox.
active
Okay.
checkbox.
Yeah.
Yes. So if I
That
add,
is
for example, a checkbox, and let's just call it active. And it's sitting in here. I'll leave it at the top here. So what you can do up here is you can say use active, and what you're going to get in your UI is this, which allows you to turn off everything in its entirety. So maybe what you want to do is, I don't know, let's say this group is your text group. Oops. Text group. And what you might want to do here is under effects, set the visibility to active. Would that be how we would do that? I think so, right? So it's going to turn off everything in that container up here. And this will visualize really nice in Studio and in Uno, both of them. But you get a nice
That's a little bit of a
representation here.
tricky, yeah, it's a little bit of a tricky feature, but very helpful if you want to just have a checkbox control things within your node container. And then, yeah, that's the tooltip.
Yeah, the tooltip is right
Which is
here.
cool.
So again, if I go back to the tooltip here, if I remove this, it disappears over here. Same with the active. Let's just delete it. You're going to see it disappears in the UI. So it much more, I like to say there's many different ways to sort of organize your control nodes that we did not have previously. So this is a big upgrade to the node container for organizing your UIs, just making them much more friendly, user-friendly for sure.
Definitely.
That's probably as deep as we want to go with that at this point, I think.
Yeah, for node containers. You ready for the next new one, which is counter? People really like counter. I like counter.
Counter. Let's put
Counter's
this,
cool.
let's make a new group. Actually, let's make it, let's leave it here. We don't have to complicate it. Let's call this counter node. Okay, and counter node. This one is really powerful if you're doing, say, like a scoreboard of some sort, and you want to count things up and down. So what you can do here is, let's go to here. We have one counter here. So if I enable a second one here, now you have +1. So if this is like 2, for example, you can see right here, you're going to be incrementing in 2s, setting it back to 0. Right?
Yeah, so the buttons on the left, he's in this set buttons section, which means you can create buttons that set the actual payload or number to 0 or 2 or whatever you say. Those are the numbers on the left-hand side. They're more squared. And then on the right-hand side, you can increment, or if you scroll down, it's these modify buttons. So you could, go down 1, up 2, up 3, whatever it is that you want. And we haven't had that sort of feature before. A lot of these things had to be scripted. So it's really nice to create these buttons, especially for scoring. It's a huge improvement.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. And the abbreviated, you see, it says M1. That's just short for modify. So M1, you have up to 7 here and 7 sets. So S1 meaning set 1, set 2. And you can see I've added some modifiers here. So I have +10, 20, 30, 40. And again, for different sports, like say, for example, American football, you might want a, a 6 for a touchdown, 3 for a field goal, and so forth. So this is super powerful. Again, you have up to 7, and you can go down here, and I think it's pretty intuitive. I don't think we've had a lot of support tickets on this in terms of how it works and how it functions, but it makes it so much easier for doing a variety of different sports, and not just sports. I mean, you can use this for anything that you need to increment numbers at a specific set amount.
Okay, we've got some questions coming in. I think we need to. We want to check out. Let's see here.
Chat.
I'm going to skip your question, Nathan, because it isn't super directly related to this webinar, but see if we can circle back, or just send that over to support and we'll help you out. Connor, I'd love to see an easy way to implement multiple counter buttons in the output result. Goes into one simple text output. Would be useful for scoreboard.
Because you want, like, say for instance, you have like team 1, score 1, but like they could have like a penalty score, and like that adds it together, or
yeah, if you could elaborate on that, Connor, that would be great. Because it seems like we're not fully clear. And then Leon, is there a way to change the text shown for the modify buttons in the counter node, for instance, if we want to show plus instead of +1 and minus instead of -1? We don't have that feature here.
But if you use Stream Deck, you could put a cool little icon on there and put whatever you want.
That's true. Right? Yeah. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, I don't think we have that, but that's a good question.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not something I'd thought about.
Okay, so I think we covered, I hope we covered those questions. Let me jump back over to
Yeah, we
Gunther,
might
keep
need
me
a little bit
honest here.
more
What's
from Connor. Okay, yeah, sure.
normalized?
Get back to us. Let's go to normalize. That's the next new one, which is, this one's a little tricky, but it's very powerful if you know how to use it. And most people might not have a use case for it, but when you need it, it's nice.
What
Okay,
is
sorry,
norm?
Connor's gotten
Oh,
back to us. Maybe we can circle back there. So imagining like a text output, like team one goal, team one point, and the same for team two. Suzanne, can you
Yeah, I think I've
try to
kind
get
of
that
got
stuff?
this. So you'd have to do some form of scripting that would basically go, okay, payload from counter team one goal adds like sums together the team one points. And then that would do the population of that. We do something similar with the bowling and what's the one where you axe throwing?
Darts?
No, axe
Yeah,
throwing.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
do it in
Yeah, yeah.
darts as well, but that's not the one I was thinking
It's
of.
complicated. Yeah.
But yeah, so you
Okay, so
can
what
do that. You just have to write a composition script that would allow you to kind of sum those 2 points up. It's not a difficult script, which I can send. I can send you a script, Connor, if you just put in your
that might
Singular.
be a cool one to publish in the template library, a simple example, because it is a good one. Maybe.
Can you elaborate on what the question is? Because I, for some reason, I'm not fully understanding. Is it like summing up two payloads to then like?
Yeah, so you think about how we do it
Okay.
in so they've got team one has like 1 point, and then they could have a second, like potentially have a second one, and he wants them to add together. So you have two different things that could add.
Yeah. Yeah. Summing with that. Yeah, that's always going to be generally a scripting thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's like a little calculator.
Yeah. Yeah,
Really?
definitely.
Hey,
If you reach out to support, we'll follow up on that for you.
it's not a bad
Okay,
one
let's
for
see.
maybe. I mean, if we can put it on our hit list for a little, maybe we can add it to the library because this is a cool one.
Yeah. Yeah, we should always be adding more comp scripts. Okay, back to normalized
Normalized
number.
number. Where do I begin? Um, so if you have, for example, let me come over here. I struggle sometimes to show the best examples. I use this all the time, I have to be honest with you. Let's say you have, should we do it here on position? Let's do it here. If I want to connect normalized number, I'm going to connect. I just connected normalized number to the Y position. And the let's see, the output I want, if this is the top point, let's go -80. And let's set the default value, see, and the high is going to be 100. Basically, what you're doing is you're remapping values. So normally you have 0 to 100, but if you want your UI to be 0 and 100, but you're only moving, say, in increments of 10 or 12 or some other value, you can normalize those values so that in the UI, it goes from 0 to 100. Am I describing that in a good way? Does that make sense?
I was participating in the chat. Do you guys understand what
Let me
Stephen
put
was
on the
saying?
slider. So actually, you see it here now. So if you notice here, the value, my low is -100 and my high is 100. Let's actually make this 50. So the UI displays a 0 and goes up to 100. Now I think I went way too far, didn't I? There we go. That would be 14 is the high, -80 is the low, right? So as you're building, sometimes you end up with values in your composition that are not normalized, I'll call it, meaning they don't go cleanly from 0 to 100. And for your operator, your user interface, you want 0 to be, in this example, at the top and 100 to be at the bottom. Now, again, I'm a little off here. So even though the values I'm remapping, so it's really negative 80 and 12. Negative 80 is the top in this case because I have the anchor point at the bottom. That's why it's a little convoluted, I'll call it, or it's not convoluted. It's just because I have it bound, I have it anchored to the bottom. So
another good like example of this is if you've got a logo inside of a box and you want someone to max it out at like 80 scale and min is 40, just from an artistic perspective, and you don't want people to go beyond or beneath that, you can remap these numbers to say 0 is whatever number I said before, 40, and 100 in this scale, this slider is 80. So you can just sort of define a range for a number of different things like this, position, stuff that makes a little bit more sense to your operator instead of weird numbers because of your particular anchor point or whatever it is.
Yeah, the other one is sizing of an image rather than you kind of saying, okay, minimum is like, I don't know, you don't want them to go below 10% in Composer, but for them 10% will be 0 and 100% will be whatever you set as 100%. Like that's always
it's just
and what I'll do here is I'll go
clean.
back and forth between using what we had in the past was just number, right? So I've got a slider on both number, the number control node, and the normalized number. In number, previously, I have a min and a max of 100. So let's just make this min, I don't know, 50. So the UI is going to be 50, right? But now with normalized number, I'll go back up to this and connect it to the normalized number. And I have a nice 0 and 100, even though my low point is negative 80. So it gives you a nice, the visualization in the control node for the fill-in form is more logical. It goes from 0 to 100 as opposed to 0 and negative 80. So that can be used all over the place whenever, because at the end of the day, when you start getting into more complicated compositions, you're going to end up with values that are not I'll call it visually nice in your UI. You don't go from 0 to 100. So with normalizing the numbers, you have the ability to go from a nice 0 to 100. I think that makes sense. I don't see any. The chat is not blowing up with questions on that. So I think I'm going to assume that people understand what that is.
Yes, that's good or bad. Maybe
let's do that. Let's just and we'll move on, and we'll hope for the best on that one. But it's a very powerful one. I use it constantly. All
right, I've got two more things in terms of notable updates. So we've got some cool updates to like 3 control nodes. Selection, number, and info text. We're going to cover selection at the end because that's when we're going to dive into a more pre-built composition to show you some stuff. But let's jump over to number, which you actually created already. You created a number one,
here. Did we?
Which is perfect.
What's
the only it is very minor. We added an option for unit.
Oh, so
a unit
like
display. Yeah. And this might be a little bit confusing. Like if you put %, all of a sudden you think that maybe that means something more to the actual comp, but really it's just an identifier for your operator. So you can put anything in there, inches.
Hi. So
hi. Yeah.
See right there. It yes. So you can what you see. It's kind of hard to. I hope it's not hard to see. But if you put a percentage side, you'll see that displayed right here in the UI as a percentage, which is kind of handy. I don't think there's anything else in number that I remember.
No, that was a very minor addition.
Info, which is pretty cool, and you can have HTML tags in here, which is pretty cool. You can hide the title, so you don't actually see it here. Hide the title you have across the board, right? So here you can hide the title, I believe. Yeah, hide title. And you can see right here, it gets rid of it. Sometimes you don't even need a title. There's a lot of instances. And maybe in info, that's a good example because maybe you don't need to say info. You just say, make this a HTML tag. And this could be any. It doesn't have to be HTML. It can be like, hello, this is a demo. So it gives you the ability to put some nice notes, and you can move this around and drop it where it makes sense. If you need a little tip, sort of a visual tip, if you will, Not a tip like I showed you earlier with the rollover tip, but that one's pretty cool.
And
I use that one.
it's good to break up lines of like within your node container, which is great now for additional organization. You can add info text to separate stuff too.
Yeah.
You could do that. It's kind of like it just makes it a little bit more digestible for your operator. And then what's cool about the extension to this, which is just the HTML formatting, along with hiding the title, which is cool, is you can add hyperlinks for web pages. So if you have some sort of external document to explain things to your operators, or some sort of, I don't know, like a Google sheet or something they need to access, you can drop that in there through HTML formatting.
That's a very good point. Maybe there's like a sheet that you're looking at data or something, just a link to some other piece to your production that you need access to. So this could be a link as well. It's in the interest of keeping and moving forward. Is it time? Is it time for
Yes,
this?
let's go to selection, because this one's really cool.
Okay, let's do, if you don't mind, I don't think there's any reason. I might just delete these so we're really focused in on selection.
Do you want to cover it now and then jump into the other composition, or just dive into the other composition?
Let me do maybe if I just do a brief selection overview, and then we'll jump
Okay.
into the composition where we're going to actually do the linking to the external files and stuff. So
okay, cool.
Let's go to selection, and I'm going to just call this text, no, title. And I'm going to connect this to the text. Again, properties. This is a property, the text property of the text widget. Title. And you can see, and we had this before. Here's your JSON right here. See if I can bring this up a little bit. A little better. So what gets mapped here is the ID. What gets passed. So this right here, this gets passed over to here, and we display it. This is the title, and you can see it right here. So if I change this, obviously, let's just call this 1, and we'll call the one down here 2.
So this is all stuff you guys probably know if you've used selection.
Yep,
so
exactly. And now you have a display format, and this is not going to mean anything right now, or I won't be able to really show you anything, because in the payload, that's what this is, or the JSON, this is a tiny little JSON structured payload. I don't have color or images, and we'll show that when I jump out of this composition and go to the nice one that was set up this morning. So this is business as usual. This, on the other hand, is a whole new ballgame. And as soon as I select URL, you can see I get an error here, which makes sense, because what we're going to do here is we're going to put a link to an external JSON file, right? A payload, which needs to be formatted correctly. In this case, I just have ID and title. So I think I should stop there, come back to the dashboard. Help me out here. Is it this one? Is this where we're going to do it?
Comp. Yeah, we've got 2 apps set up linked to this comp that you guys will see what it looks like in Studio, because we haven't shown you what all of these updates look like in the actual control interface. So
ooh, this is cool.
We'll jump over there in a second.
We have a sub comp, it looks like. Is it down in here where it is? Nope, no.
Yeah, it's there. The structure's a little
size, right?
Maybe complicated.
Flag.
Yes.
Okay.
So we actually have 2 selections. One is if you want to cover the metal first, that is a lighter version.
This one?
And then the flag is, yes. So this is, we're not actually referencing an external URL, which we'll cover with the flags. This is just 3 different images inside of the payload. And so you can see in the display format, which Stephen mentioned earlier.
Set the image. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look over to the right-hand panel where you see the control interface, yeah, you can see that image displayed, these 3 different images of a gold, silver, and bronze.
And what a perfect opportunity to hit this button, because now in this, we jumped over to a composition that has a lot more control nodes already built out. So it starts getting a little bit difficult to see where you're working. So you go right here and you have a nice little way of seeing what you're working on, kind of like similar to it's bounding box, just like we have
I forgot about that
in the render. It's so helpful. This one is really, really helpful, especially when you're dealing with many more complicated compositions, lots of control nodes. And you can see right here, this is the one we're looking at right here, the gold metal, and you've got a drop down. So what you're displaying here is you're telling it, hey, use the image in the display format. What should I display? If I set this to text, I'm just going to see gold. If I set this to image, I see an image because this is an actual image path of, I think these are inside of Singular. You can see that because it says assets, but this could be outside of Singular. This could be from your own web server anywhere, which is super cool. Let's get a little bit more. If we go this guy, okay.
And I think this is going to cover Roscoe's question right here,
Yeah.
which is it would be cool to just keep things organized if it were possible to upload the JSON to the assets folder similar to images and then use the resulting URL. Is that possible? Yes, it's not a matter of like clicking on this is the JSON I want to use in the dashboard, but this is where we're going to get into where you can upload JSON to your dashboard and then copy the unique URL and drop it into that JSON source box. So if you just want to dive into that.
I will come back to this little refresh button because we allow you, and in this one down here that we showed you previously, is it advanced? No, where is it?
Go down.
There's a couple selections in this one. It looks like right metal image.
No.
It's not this one.
It's not in flag. We give you the ability to use the reload button in the flag example, not flags in general. And what that does is it's going to display this button. I'm just going to toggle it on and off for a minute. The reason you want this is you might want this when you're building, but then later you turn it off for your operator, or you could leave it on. It just reloads the payload. It goes and refreshes the link to the payload. So if something happened to the JSON, not happened, but if you edited the JSON file, which I'll show you in a minute, right here we have a link. So whereas, let me just come back to this one. This one, again, we're using manual. I'm just manually typing it in here. But if we go to flag, we're using this file. I'm just going to copy this, open up another browser tab and paste it. I'm going to start there because what this is, come on. There it goes. I have a formatter. That's why when you first saw it appear, I have a plugin, an add-on, I should say, on Google that formats it nicely. So you see the JSON. This JSON file, see it says asset singular, is actually located. Bear with me here, my mouse is sticking. Here we go. It's right.
There's two in there. It's the
Is it this one or this one?
It's the square.
Okay. So this is a JSON file. Again, I can double click and open it and look at it just like I just did 2 seconds ago. And I can inspect this. I can edit this now. This is new in the latest release. I can actually edit the JSON here. It might be a little, for small edits, I'd say you can obviously edit it here. If you make a mistake, it's going to go red around the outline so that you know that JSON is no longer formatted correctly. And then you can save it. And that is the file by which you're now referencing, which is super powerful because let's say you have several compositions and you're always accessing this list of, say, flags in this case. Multiple compositions can access this file. So it's really, really nice to have external control. So again, you're going to copy the URL, right? That's the link. I'll jump back over to the
and this is how you do it, Roscoe, rather than
and you paste it right here.
Clicking on the file. Yep.
Ooh, I like this. These new selection options are so exciting. Is there a way to update the options in a selection control node through composition scripting or update a .json file posted on the dashboard being referenced in the URL field?
That is a Thomas question.
Yes. Well, you cannot directly update the JSON through the composition script, but what you can do is you can write a cloud service that returns a JSON in the format that the selection JSON defines and requires. So instead of entering the URL to a JSON file, you enter the URL to your cloud service that then returns a JSON in the format.
That is what we would call sleight of hand, and it's very cool. It's definitely more advanced, but that cloud service would, I don't know if, I can't think if I've had to do that or we've had to do that, but that's a great example. So again, let me just go back to that, back to the dashboard. It was this JSON, and I inspected it. so that I could see it here. I can edit it here. I can copy the link and I can drop that right here. And that is the file by which we are seeing all the flags. Oh, I didn't even show this. How cool does that look? And you can see it's going to update. And the update animation is triggering. Hopefully people are familiar with the update animations.
And just so people remember, the formatting of the JSON has to be the same as if you were just writing it inside of the selection rather than referencing an external file. So you have to use ID and title. So if we actually inspect the JSON file in the dashboard, you'll see that it's formatted in that way, just so that.
Yeah, there's actually one more thing I want to add. The cloud service and the URL or the format of the JSON URL you enter there, it only needs to include the ID in lowercase and the title in lowercase. Of course, you can add a lot more information to that, so that your JSON includes an entire lookup table for team colors, team IDs, dry code names, short names, long names, and things like that. And this will work within the selection as long as there is an ID and a title field. There's actually another tag which you can define and which you can add. It's called icon in lowercase. And when you have that defined and point to an image URL, it will show an icon in front of the name. So there's a lot more to explore.
I would also say that we actually, thank you, Thomas, for bringing that up. And what Thomas mentioned earlier, at the very minimum, you have to have ID and title. And that's what you see here in the manual example we showed. But what Thomas is describing, you can expand that, right? As long as it's formatted correctly, JSON, you can add things like image URLs, icons, and so forth. I didn't mention this guy, which is the filter. The filter is super cool because if I have flag selected, here's flag, and I start typing in Austria, AU, well, I get Australia and Austria, right? Because it's filtering, so I can start typing and go through a long list, which is a nice little feature. So you can start typing and it's going to auto find what you type. You don't have to have that filter on there, but you can. I think that covers.
Should we show color really fast? I mean, without disrupting this, because I want to make sure we show the control interface.
Do
but
we
just
have
by adding
a color example in here, like a JSON prepped for color?
No, I should have. But we could just type out just a few so you guys can see what display format looks like for color. So since we've seen image and you guys know what text looks like, but if you have color in your ID field, like a hex code, it will actually display that color as a box on the left-hand side, which is pretty nice for an operator, I think.
Yes.
We don't have to use an external file for that. I don't think we could just write it in.
Do you have a little payload, Suzanne? Do you have a little chunk of a preset one with color
in it? A preset one?
Yeah, just like one. I'm thinking if we have one, you could dig one up for me because
should we just write one real fast with white and
yeah, yeah, I would just write one quickly.
While you're doing that, I'm going to show you, there was one more thing I wanted to show you on here. Wasn't this? Sorry, apologize. I lost my train of thought because didn't have. No.
Yes, Corey, it would still work. It's just that those additional properties, you can't really utilize them until you access them within the composition script. So the stuff that you can hook up within the comp is just going to be ID and title. So if you hook up a selection drop down to a property, that property is only going to ever reference the ID field, and then the title is what's within the selection drop down. Everything else is stuff that you can map through scripting. So it just gets into some more complicated stuff, which we will cover in our next webinar. We've talked about that.
while Suzanne is grabbing me a little, don't forget you can drag and drop and move these around the entire as you can with individual control nodes, but you can take the whole group and move around. If, for example, you add a let's see if I can add test. Let's show you something. If you have one that's outside, completely outside of a control node, right? So I've got control nodes grouped, right? I thought lots using group, another word for it. And you're going to see what it's going to say is that not in any control node container. So you know that that's outside of a control node. I'm sorry, I think control node, a node container. I'm looking around to see if there was other. I showed this.
Stephen, I sent it to your Slack.
And I saw, Suzanne, you dropped in a nice JSON viewer. Oh, that's the Chrome extension. If anyone wants that Chrome extension, it's dropped into the chat. But there's also an online JSON editor, which I'll drop in here, which is nice for formatting your JSON before you actually export it or save it as a file. And you can do that from this editor. There's a way to save to your, what they say, save to disk, save to your computer. So.
Okay, so let's go back to my example here and on the rectangle. Thank you, Suzanne. So Suzanne just sent me this little payload for colors. I'm just going to attach it to this rectangle. Color. And now you see the colors.
Yeah.
So all I did is I just took this simple payload ID and title, but this doesn't, you got the name and the hex value. And if you set this to color for the display format, it's going to display the actual color here in the dropdown, which is another nice little feature.
I also threw a bit of an Easter egg if anyone can spot what I've done.
There's an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Oh, teal, yes. For the fourth option in ID instead of it
Yes.
being a hex code.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can do that. That's a little sleight of hand. I like that.
That's
It supports
precision on the
HTML
color,
color
but-
names too.
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on the chat. Did we miss anything here?
I have an hard out in 2 minutes. I added a composition that's called the sum control nodes. If you want to show that, it has some composition scripting which displays the control node values and then just also updates the sum depending on what you select there.
I think before we jump into that, because I think we'll definitely upload this for you guys so you can explore it. I want to first have a look at what the actual control interface looks like with all these new control node features. Are you guys cool with that? That is a really nice script. Okay. So I've set up 2 different apps, an Uno app and then a Studio app connected to that Olympic comp. And we'll just see what all this stuff looks like in the app.
All right, I'm going to open up this guy and I'll open up the Uno and we'll go start with Studio here. I'll close that. Thank you, Thomas, for that script. It's awesome. I mean, that one,
Yeah.
probably dump that in the library. That's a cool one.
Yeah,
here
definitely, we'll
is
do
the
that.
visualization of the one we were showing earlier. So you can see, bang, bang, update. Oh, no, I guess I should probably change it to China, update, and there it goes. So this is visualizing the UI. Thomas, Thomas jumped. You had another call. Yeah, you can see the visualization here of your control nodes as it gets presented in Singular Studio. And this is what it looks like in Uno, right?
So the node containers you'll see are really nice because you could just collapse. You can do this in both Studio and Uno. You can collapse the whole box if you want. So
yeah, you can do this. That is a good point. We don't have the on-off switch here, but I showed you that earlier where you can enable an on-off switch where you add an active. So go ahead and play around with that one. And over here, same thing. You can collapse it here. Again, I'm glad we do this to go back and forth because we're just visualizing it differently in two different apps, right? We have different CSS for Uno than we do for Studio. This is more functional, I'll call it, as opposed to more fancy.
Yes, node containers are so much cleaner. I totally agree, Connor. I think we'll agree on that. That's
Especially when you have a lot of
nice.
them. That's so good.
And you can
Yeah.
see here
what
it
you
is
do
in
for
its
sport. I know you're doing sport, Connor. So
here it is in its wide form or large form display. But again, if I go back to the composition, this one, you can set that to small. It just depends. In some cases you want large, some cases you want small. So the main, maybe you want large. Maybe position would be okay if it was small. Back over to Studio, do a refresh.
and then maybe if we show both small.
Here's
Well,
small.
okay, so there's more real estate here. But if you go over to Uno, you'll see that it doesn't put them side by side. It just depends on the interface that you're working with. You have to play around with.
Well,
You know,
yeah, and Uno is
how you
completely
want it to look.
it's a completely responsive UI. So if you go to settings and you set this to one panel, oh, I'm sorry, maybe I only have one. If I break this tab away
Yeah, good point.
and you start seeing side by side and coming like this, I don't know if this is a good example because we only have, here it is, size and position. We only have one control grouping here, so otherwise you would see it a little bit more. Here's size and position, there it is.
So, but if you do both of those as small, they'll group them side by side, which is what Suzanne actually just said. Sports lineups, team 1 and team 2, you could group the control nodes there, and then if you even have them side by side, it depends on your operator, but that could be a really clean way to organize things.
Where the frick is the Uno? There it is. I think I'm going pretty quick here, but you know, I think hopefully people on this call, you can see here they're side by side, and they're exactly half size. Like large is full and half, I should say small is exactly half of large. This one's collapsed. I believe now if you collapse these, for example, and refresh the browser page, I believe the guys remember, yeah, they remember the setting that you kept, which is nice. Back to
selection. We should show something about selection really fast. There's a way that you can allow your operator to search in the selection dropdown, which is really nice when you have, tons of flags, tons of country flags. I think you have to enable that. Yes,
filter.
there.
Yeah, you just, yeah. So I have filter enabled. That's what I mentioned earlier, I think, with filter. So I just start typing in Austria or AUS, which brings up Australia and Austria. So again, if you start typing, like, click here, US, you'll get, sorry, it's hard. This really should be set to large, but you get the point. So AUS is going to return Australia and Austria.
Yeah, whatever you name it, your items in the selection. And then there's that refresh button, which, as we talked about before, if you see a mistake in your JSON payload that you're referencing from your dashboard or anywhere else on the internet, and you need to change it, hitting that refresh button will update the payload for you. I think Hubert mentioned, though, that on every refresh of your app, it refreshes the connection to the JSON anyways.
Correct.
So you don't
But
really
if somebody was, if you had like somebody dynamically changing this drop down, which you might be wanting an operator just to be selecting. So the reason you have this is it gives the operator the ability to force to go get the JSON quickly. If you didn't have this enabled, you'd have to refresh the page. Then you lose the UI for a second as the web page is redrawing. The control page, it is a web page. So that's why this is kind of handy in certain circumstances. It's also handy while you're building, because you can quickly, if you're going back and forth and saying, oh, I forgot to add a certain country, and then you can just refresh here. It's quicker, it's faster and easier to do this then refresh the page in that instance. So it is a handy tool. Again, when you're done, maybe you don't need this, but you might if you don't want the operator to have to lose their UI. Because if I do this, I'm going to lose my UI for a moment, which is not that pleasant.
It's not the end of the world, but
It just depends. If you don't want to, it depends on what you're doing. So
we had an earlier
Okay.
question from Roscoe about how do you force the side-by-side look in Studio, and essentially what he just did, although this is actually side-by-side with one large group and one small group, it depends on how much room you've enabled in your that overlay editor panel, but because it is responsive at some point, but if you do too small, it definitely forces the side-by-side look.
Ooh, look at that little overlap right there. I'll have to show this to our friends, to our dev team. That's going to drive them crazy. See how this is hanging over just by a scotch.
Yeah.
You have that refresh, not the end of the world.
See if there's anything.
I think that covers everything. I hope this was informative. Everyone seems to be happy. I think, I'm sorry, which was who was the person that was in the that commented about I'll call it the calculator. This one here.
Was that you, Connor? I think probably for Gaelic sports, because there's some math involved in total values.
Can we give Connor this? Look, I'll refresh this. Thomas.
Yeah, if you want to reach out on support, we can just send that to you directly. It's not possible for us to just drop it in the chat, obviously. And then we'll look into posting this in our marketplace for everyone to have access to.
It's calculator.
Numbers are adding together.
Yeah.
To create the sum, which is necessary for a lot of sports, especially bowling. The math behind bowling is quite complicated. To me, it seems complicated. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get it. Perfect. Okay, cool. That's all I have.
Thank you,
I think
guys.
that's it. Thank you, Roscoe. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. And hopefully we'll do another one soon-ish, as now we're into the summer and we can find some time to do this, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we'll definitely do more.
Miran, I have to reach out to my friend Miran. I haven't spoken to him in a while. I saw a message from him and I apologize. I didn't get back to you. I was super slammed. Actually, I was traveling, but Miran is somebody I need to reach out to. Martin, thank you for joining. And I think...
Should we end it?
I think we should end it.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time. Take care. Bye-bye.